For more international analysis on the Russian presidential election, we are now joined live by historian Webster Tarpley from Washington, D.C. Mr. Tarpley, thank you for being with us.
Hi, Sean.
Now, this has been Russia's most transparent election so far. Do you think that the West will share this view once official results have been announced?
Well, unfortunately, the elites here in Washington are, I think, apoplectic with rage about this. This is not the outcome that they wanted. I'm not sure what they did want, but certainly not this. The perspective we now have is taking some steps away from the unipolar world, which has proven to be such a failure, in the direction of a more balanced world through the creation of some kind of counterweight or check against the more irresponsible and reckless policies of the Anglo-Americans. I would like to congratulate the Russian people for a tremendous amount of civic maturity that they've shown, a tremendous sense of international responsibility. It is a historic occasion. I would compare it to Franklin D. Roosevelt winning the third term in 1940 or General DeGaulle returning to power in France in 1958. As of right now, Vladimir Putin is, in my judgment, the most prestigious political leader in the world, with an immense political capital, and not a moment too soon, because partly as a result of what's happened in the intervening years, we've got the whole Middle East on the verge of a major war. We've got the Israeli prime minister here trying to convince the American president, a feckless figure, that it's time to have a general Middle East war. And I think this is the moment where that political capital of President-elect Putin could be invested, and perhaps towards some kind of a diplomatic solution to this. We've also got a world economic depression going on. So it seems to me that President-elect Putin could afford to think a little bit bigger than what we just heard.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned civic maturity just a second ago. This is kind of juxtaposed to Senator John McCain, who is a prominent American politician, in the past has warned of a possible Arab Spring scenario playing out here in Russia. So do you think that some might still try and push the country towards instability, despite what seems to be a clear victory here for Putin?
I think it's unfortunately more than likely. We have the American ambassador, Michael McFaul. I guess I can say this from here. He's an expert in color revolutions. He thinks that he's the man who brought us the orange events in Kiev in 2004. He'd like to cap that with a white revolution in Moscow. But it's very interesting. If we look at the actual demonstrations, especially in Moscow in the last 3 or 4 months, what were the big ones? The second largest, I think, was a pro-Putin demonstration at the Luzhniki Stadium, I believe, with about 130,000 people. The biggest, bar none, as far as I can see, was the Victory Park demonstration in the first week of February, which were nationalists who were anti-orange, in other words, anti-color revolution, anti-U.S. embassy interfering. This was addressed by people like my friend Maxim Shevchenko and others, and they were interested in stability. Their line was that the Limonov and Nemtsov and people like this and the Orange Group, that they're interested in really smashing the Russian state, not overthrowing Putin, but doing some permanent harm to Russia. So even in the narrow terms of who can mobilize support in Moscow alone, I think the task for these white-orange enthusiasts is basically hopeless, and they should drop it.
Now, when it comes to global politics, there's lots of talk about reset and relations between the West and Russia. Do you think that much will change in Russian-U.S. relations after Putin replaces Medvedev?
I hope that we can get back to the situation we had in 2007. I mean, one of the historical merits of Putin is that he basically helped to stop, or maybe stopped, a war involving Iran, a U.S. or Israeli or both attacking Iran back in 2007. That was the occasion of President Putin's visit to President Ahmadinejad, and I think that's the kind of thing that we could hope for. The policy of appeasement has been tried and does not work, and there is no rational interlocutor here in Washington. We have a ruling elite which is in a kind of flight forward. Sometimes it appears as a war psychosis. Sometimes it appears as a psychosis of destabilization and meddling in the internal affairs of other countries. But the only language these people understand, unfortunately, is a strong front and the idea that they're going to be resisted. I'm afraid that's where we are now, and the quicker everybody understands this, the better off we will all be. The other alternative brought us the terrible events in Libya with 150,000 dead. If you give these people an inch, they will take a mile.
Now, real quickly, briefly, because we're running out of time, but could you tell me what you think Putin's presidency should focus on next?
I think, first of all, war avoidance. In other words, a major Russian initiative for some kind of diplomatic solution. We just heard Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel say there should not be any negotiations involving Iran. Well, there should be. And Russia would now have the authority. Again, with the most prestigious political leader in the world, at least by my count, would be possible to put that on the agenda. The other thing is, we've got a world economic depression. It hit the U.S. and the British in 2008. It's hitting Europe now. It will go on to hit others. Don't we need some kind of international economic reform, which would not be in the direction of the neoliberal synthesis or IMF shock therapy or the demands of the super-rich 1%, but rather the broad mass of humanity, especially in the developing world?
All right, thank you very much. That was historian Webster Tarpley talking to us from Washington, D.C.
Thank you.